Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of combat trauma and PTSD, suicide ideation and mental health struggles, childhood trauma and parental issues, veteran challenges in civilian life, addiction and substance use, medical trauma, and injuries. Our goal is to share real-life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well-being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I have my first male guest on the podcast today, and I just want to put a disclaimer out there that this was not intentional for it to be an all-female interview situation, but it's just worked out that way. So I am really excited today to welcome Adam Peters. Adam is a veteran and founder of the Stronghold, a community dedicated to supporting veterans transitioning back to civilian life. His journey includes a transformative ayahuasca experience, losing 100 pounds, and building a community centered on resilience, holistic healing, and personal growth. Welcome, Adam. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super grateful to be here, and I'm excited to share my story.
Yeah, you seem like you've had quite the journey in life so far. So I'm going to let you take the lead on wherever you want to start as far as your story goes, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, so I guess my story starts. I was born and raised in southern Indiana in the farm towns. I grew up in a broken home. I grew up with a lot of, I don't know, I would say adversity around relationships because my mother and father were not, they didn't co-parent well, particularly my mom. Part of a lot of the trauma I had to get over with was dealing with kind of the person that my mom was as a mother growing up, trying to keep us kids from our dad and stuff like that. And then also lots and lots of bullying. As you see, I've been in glasses since I was 2 years old. And as a product of the 80s and early 90s, glasses weren't cool ever. And it's one of the things that really pisses me off today, where glasses have become excuse me, an accessory
Yeah.
because I was relentlessly bullied
Mm.
for wearing glasses. And now it's cool to wear glasses. And
And
it's
a lot
not.
of like celebrities and sports players are wearing them just like non-prescription.
Yeah, and it sounds really ridiculous, but what I wouldn't give to know what it's like to walk through life without having to have glasses, not having to just roll over and the first thing I do every single day is put them on my face and they're there until I go to bed. You know what I mean? Anyway, grew up pretty rough, pretty, I wouldn't say destitute, poor, but poor. Like it's Southern Indiana, it's the farm towns. My dad is a commercial kitchen equipment repairer, and my mom has never really had a full-time job her whole entire life, only part-time. School was great. Lots of good schools in Indiana, I think personally. I'm thinking back to my education, knowing what kind of education people are getting now, and I see a lot of differences and a lot of different things. So, no complaints there. Just knew college wasn't the option for me. I did what I had to do to keep my grades up so I could play sports. And I think that's really the only reason I stayed in school. School just didn't resonate with me, and it wouldn't until later in life. So I joined the Army at 17. I had a buddy who was a year ahead of me on the wrestling team. His name was Alex Burkle, one of my biggest influences for joining the Army. And he went to basic training between summer, between his senior year, junior and senior year. And I tried to do the same thing. I missed that by a day. So I ended up being on the delayed entry program for a year. I left a month to the day after I graduated basic training and found myself at Fort Benning, Georgia, ready to be an infantryman. 16 weeks later, would graduate, didn't have a duty station. That's a whole nother story. So ended up Getting sent to Fort Stewart, Georgia was my first duty station. And about 10 months later, I'd be on my first Iraq deployment. And that's basically the tempo of my career. Every other year for the next 13 years, I would be deployed. Come back from Afghanistan in 2015 or late 2012, early 2013. And then I'd spend the next year and a half in the med board process. And I was medically retired in 2015.
Okay. Why did they medically retire you?
So let's see, I did 3 total deployments to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan for almost 5 years of combat time as an infantryman. So my body's pretty broken. I had 7 or 8 surgeries while I was in the Army, and I've had another 5 or 6 since I've been out, on everything from rebuilding my foot to hernia repairs to
Wow.
left labrum repairs to bicep tendon repairs to culminating this January with a microdiscectomy at L4, L5 to get a herniated disc off of my nerve.
Mm,
Caused a bunch of nerve damage. So I live with quite a bit of pain and just couldn't do the job anymore. Was I 30? Yeah, a 30-year-old man trying to keep up with 18-year-olds as a broken guy. Yeah, I could still, obviously, I'm in decent shape now. I was in decent shape then. It's just different. It's just different. You can't operate at that pace forever. And I guess it was just my body said, no, you can't be an infantry guy anymore. We're going to kick you out.
How did that feel?
Like shit.
Yeah, because that wasn't your choice to just retire.
No, I joined initially for 6 years. And my thinking behind that, and mind you, I got no bonus at the time. So I joined in 2003. I think the biggest bonus at the time was maybe $5,000 or $6,000. I did, quote unquote, get a bonus. It was Army College Fund money. That's kind of 13 years later, that program had died, and everybody that worked at the education benefits place had forgotten about that program. So they still owe that to me. Someday, maybe I'll figure out how to use that. But no bonus. And my philosophy was, by the end of 6 years, I'll know either this was a good run, give me some life experience, I'll move on, or I'm going to make this a career. And so by and large, at 13 years, I was a career guy. I knew I was going to stay till 22. There's some things you can do at your 18 where you can get some extra cash, and then you have to go to 22 to get your full percentage of retirement. So I knew for a fact that I would go to 22. And then it was cut short 8 years. Like that's how it went. And by and
Wow.
large, I was lost. I had no plan. I had it just one day. You are coming off your first shoulder surgery. You are in a pull-up competition with a younger Joe, and you tear it again. You go back and have the second surgery, and the physical therapist does exactly what the surgeon said not to do, and it ends your career. And now you're scrambling to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, your plan was to stay in the military for
Yeah, it was a
many
career
more years.
for me because I would have ended up, I'd have been, we call it double dipping. So if you make it to 20 and you get 100% from the VA, then you're double dipping. So you've got a retirement and you've got VA compensation. And by and large, I would have been making really good money. I make okay money now with VA compensation. Not that I didn't earn it. I swear I did earn it.
Sure.
But I've got buddies from my peer group that finished their career because my 20 would have been 2 years ago. And it's awful, but we can't do anything about that.
Hi, friend, and welcome to this episode of Radiant Resilience. We are always looking for new guests on the podcast. I want to highlight you if you have a story of resilience that inspires others. Everyone has a story, and I believe that sharing yours can help others feel less alone. Are you ready to share your journey and inspire others? I want to hear from you. Every story has the power to impact lives and foster a supportive community. If you have a tale of overcoming adversity, personal growth, or a unique perspective on life's challenges, I would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. To become a guest, please email us directly at radiantresiliencepodcast@gmail.com or click the link in the show notes to become a guest. Join us in spreading hope, strength, and inspiration one story at a time. Be brave and share your story so others feel less alone. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, but so you're forced to get out and you're lost, and now what?
Yeah, it leads into all the work that I do now, but the transition process out of the military, it used to be called ACAP for the Army when I went through it. I think now it's called SFL TAP. I have no idea what it stands for. Something transition assistance program. It's largely just to cover your ass, check the box kind of thing for the military to say that they did something to prepare you to get out. What did that look like for me? I have to think back almost a decade ago, but a lot of it was done online. I didn't even have to show up in person. It's a lot of throwing resources at you without giving you time to digest them or learn how to implement them or even understand what a use case could be for those resources. And then they qualify you by having you write a resume. And then for enlisted guys like me, it's use your GI Bill, get a degree, good luck finding a corporate job, pat you on the butt, and say, see ya later. The first 4 years of my transition was pretty easy because I did exactly what they said. I used my GI Bill, I went to flight school and became a commercial pilot, got an AST and professional pilot, and then continued on finishing out, exhausting my GI Bill and using another program called Voc Rehab to go get my bachelor's degree in business and psychology. And then the real work began. And that's when I really figured out that corporate America is not for me.
It's not for me either. And I don't know that I've ever even worked. So I'm a hairdresser. I did work for cost cutters once, which I guess is corporate, but I don't know. I have so many friends and family members in corporate jobs and I don't know how they do it. The complaints and everything. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, it's a matter of, for me, defining what success looked like for me. And I guess starting with my definition of success, it's total control over my time. And then as far as financial, I think this is the part that people get wrong. To declare yourself financially free, ask yourself what that looks like. For me, it looks like, do I want to take a trip to Europe next week? And can I buy the tickets, plan the week with hotels, whatever, for the entire week, all of the cost of living when you go over there for a week, and then come home without checking my bank account? That's it. I really don't think that's really that unreasonable. It's way more attainable than trying to build $1 billion company or a multi-million dollar company. And it really gives you an idea of where to start. And so that's my definition of success. And what I was finding in all the different corporate jobs I did, and I've done everything. I worked retail while I was in college at a vape store. I managed a gun store while I was finishing out my bachelor's degree, so much so to the point where I was so good at it and ingrained myself in his business that he stopped showing up 7 days a week. I was the guy. And
Wow.
I was making $15 an hour. Like, that's not going to fly with me. I went to the insurance industry, started selling final expense to seniors, the poorest 1/3 of Americans. None of that business ever stays on the books, went broke doing that. Worked from home health insurance, worked at an Allstate agency, mowed grass on a sod farm. All these places had the same thing in common. Any VA appointment I had, I would have to either use PTO or the threat of being fired if I continue to just come up with random VA appointments. And it's like, I would explain to the person in charge at all these places, like, I don't get a choice when these VA appointments come up. Like, I just have to take the first available, which is usually months away. Then I forget about it because they give you a printout that you're just going to wad up and throw in the trash can, and I was just fed up with that. I don't like entitled veterans and I don't consider myself an entitled veteran, but I feel like I earned the right to go to a VA appointment no matter what job I have and not be penalized for that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sit well with me. And long story short, had an event that I know we're going to talk about later in the episode that changed my life and really got me out of my own way and really informed that I don't have to play in that box that society has drawn for us. And I can live a life that is in alignment with my core beliefs, values, and passions.
I love that. Yeah. My husband and I do a lot of traveling, and we actually owned a restaurant for many years with my in-laws. And then we sold the restaurant about 3 years ago. And I have a lot of flexibility because I own my own business and I do hair and whatever, and I can make my own schedule. But my husband was then like, okay, what am I supposed? I want to still be able to travel to the capacity that we've been doing. I don't want to ask for time off. I don't want to be denied time off. And we go for multiple weeks at a time. We're not doing a normal vacation. So,
Well, it should be.
yeah. So he was like, this is really important to me for us to keep being able to do this. So he now works at a brewery and pours beer, and they don't care if he goes for a month or 2 months and he comes back. And a lot of people, I think I have a lot of people that ask me, they're like, how do you do that? How on earth do you go for that amount of time? What does your husband do that you can do that? And I'm like, we just prioritized it. We made that our lives. And yes, unfortunately, I have to pay for my own health insurance. I don't get paid time off. I don't get any of those benefits. However, I plan for it, I make it happen, and I've been able to do it for 15 years and it's been amazing. So I totally get that freedom aspect of it is huge.
It's everything to me.
Yeah. So I'm assuming because of going to the places that you have mentioned that you went to in the military, you probably were struggling with some PTSD as well. Is that?
Yeah. Hindsight's 2020, right? Like all the work I've done on myself in the last year after that life-changing event really informed a lot of the things that I was dealing with. Turns out I was dealing with a lot of childhood trauma, not a lot of war.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I guess at the risk of, I don't know, embarrassing myself or attracting the haters to me, the combat, I didn't really have a problem with the killing. Just to be blunt, really, that didn't bother me. It's the rules of war. Plus, I was an infantryman, so that's really in the job description. The job description is to close with and destroy the enemy. Like it doesn't get more clear than that. I think what really got me was having to pick up brothers and sisters' body parts and go to the memorials and fold the flags on the caskets and present that final slow, teary-eyed salute to the tune of probably close to 100, I would say, while I was in, that were maybe not directly attached to me, but I knew of them. We had spoken at some point, that kind of thing. Yes and no. I think a combination of unresolved childhood trauma, as I'm learning, and I'm sure you probably have learned through doing what you do and your show and everything like that, and the combat stuff. And then, of course, a couple of TBIs. Everything causes TBI. We didn't know what we didn't know about TBI back then that we
What is
know.
that?
Traumatic brain injury. So
Oh, right. Okay.
anything from being blown up in a Humvee to shooting your rifle, believe it or not, actually causes micro TBIs. It's
Oh,
interesting. Yeah, it's crazy. Anytime we blew a door, anytime you have an engagement with a 50 cal, 240 Bravo, M249, your regular service rifle, your pistol, all of that is creating micro concussions and giving you many TBIs over and over again.
wow.
That up over a course of 13 years. And I'm not here to toot my own horn or say I have it worse than anybody else. There's plenty of special operations guys out there that suffer from it probably far worse than I do. I was a conventional guy, just happened to have a lot of combat time. So yeah, I did deal with a lot of that stuff. And a lot of that stuff manifested in anger, lots, just rage, anger, quick, very quick to become angry for absolutely no reason. And what's even more frustrating about that is I didn't even know why I was angry. It was just a default response.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that was probably my biggest challenge was that. And then just the loss of identity and purpose after transitioning out.
Yeah.
My whole life from 17 to 30 was the army. So I don't know anything else. I have no idea who I am as a person. Who is Adam, right? Like I was coming from a broken home, from poor in Southern Indiana to the military where really I'm a target. That's what they want. I'm a prime candidate because they can mold me into that fixed mindset of be the best army infantryman for the cause and the army that you can be. And you quickly become consumed by that. And then thinking I was going to go to 22 years and actually only getting to 15 with no plan, you quickly start to figure out that you don't have a place in the world and you might as well just end it all because it's better than just waking up and feeling empty every single day with nothing bringing you joy whatsoever. It's a lot of the first thing that goes is the physical activity, then the weight gain comes, then you start to feel like shit, then you start doom scrolling countless hours of YouTube, podcasts, fucking video games on your phone, whatever that looks like. And then you're on your Harley riding down the freeway. Wow, if I just throw this into a tree at 120, it all ends. And so that's what it looked like after I finished college and was in the civilian workforce trying to figure out like none of this shit resonates with me. Here I was going overseas, a well-respected leader. I didn't think highly of myself, but I've since accepted that I was a good leader based off of still the mentorships that I have with active duty soldiers now. I just like I was this leader and I went to combat and I did all of these things. And here I am, I'm fucking working a vape shop or managing a gun store. And I'm grateful for all of those opportunities, particularly the vape shop and the gun store. The vape shop was family owned. They are largely responsible for kicking off my entrepreneurial spark and really giving me the chance to learn and grow as an entrepreneur, whether I knew it at the time or not. And so, Larry and Margot, I don't know if you ever hear this, but I love you guys very much. And I'm
Oh,
super grateful for you guys. But I felt like all of those things were beneath me,
yeah.
if I'm
Yeah.
being honest, right? Like, I've got 13 years leading men into combat. And I say men because I was in a combat arms unit before women were allowed in them. So I didn't lead women, I led men
Mhm.
and took them to war and brought them home. You know what I mean? That's a huge, to me, that's a huge resume bullet that can translate to,
Yeah.
right? And the corporations don't see it that way. So any kind of leadership position that I felt like I was qualified for, it's bro. You don't have a master's degree. You don't have 15 years experience in this industry. We don't want you. And so that's a lot of what I dealt with. And that's pretty defeating, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. And at that point, how old were you at that point?
30.
30. Yeah. You're getting into
Well,
your
I
30s.
guess so. I got out in November of 2015, so I was 30, and then I finished college in 2020. So you just with COVID and all of that. So it took a little bit, plus flight school, it's weather dependent, and Washington State doesn't have the greatest weather in the winter, if you haven't noticed. It took a little bit, but like I was getting money from the GI Bill and voc rehab and while I was in college. But so we'll just call it 35 to be completely at 35 years old. I'm very set in my ways. I know the difference between right and wrong, and I have some core beliefs and values. Whether I'd taken the time to sit down and identify them or not is a different story. You just, you're not really at a place, and I challenge anybody listening, if you're 35 years old, imagine starting from the ground up all over again, paying dues in a profession. People ask me, you went through flight school, pilots get paid a lot of money. Why aren't you flying professionally? Because I didn't want to spend 18 months after I got my commercial license instructing people, dependent on a student for a paycheck, turning circles in a practice area in the sky,
Mm.
doing the same thing day in and day out. I was like, this doesn't make sense. And the only reason we have to do that is because in 2014, Congress decided you needed to have a minimum of 1,500 hours to go to the airlines for safety. That's this. I just didn't want to pay dues. And some people say I'm lazy or tell me I should have sucked it up, but it's my life, and that didn't align with me and what I felt like I should be doing.
But you're 35 years old and you've already lived so much life. And I think the haters can hate, let them hate. But like,
Yeah.
that's not, oh, you've already lived so much life at that point. And then to have that identity crisis, like I fully believe that we cannot judge anyone until we walk in their shoes. And anybody that walked your journey would have felt the same way.
There's a lot of them out there that are currently doing the same thing. And that's how we ended up where we're at with the strategic veteran today is I genuinely just want to be the guy I didn't have when I got out. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of other people out there that are doing what I'm doing. And it's great. Like, I'm glad that they're out there doing it because there's a need for it. And I really just want to help people avoid the things that I didn't avoid because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, you go and do ayahuasca. Tell me about, I'm so fascinated by this. What prompted you to do that? Where did you go to do it? And then tell me all about it.
This is probably my favorite part. I love this stuff. I told you I was in that really dark place, wanting to throw the motorcycle into a tree. Whether I ever had the balls to do that to myself or not, we'll never know the answer to that question, thankfully. And I'll tell you, I probably didn't have the balls to do it. But through that, one of the odd jobs, like I said, was mowing grass on a sod farm. And it ties into kind of what sent me over the edge. I had gone back to flight school to finish to pay those dues. Like I said, I didn't want to do. And I ended up having to wait on the FAA for about 6 months to send me some paperwork that I needed in order to progress. And so I grabbed this job in the sod farm. It was probably the best job I've ever had in that there was zero responsibility and oversight. It was show up at 7, work till 5:30, put your headphones in, listen to audiobooks and podcasts, whatever that looks like for you. Just do what you're supposed to do. And
Nice.
I really, and making $1,000 a week after taxes to do it. So that's pretty decent money
Yeah.
here, and not hard work. It's just hot, like whatever. So in that process, I knew I had been struggling for a long time, but I have a handful of buddies who actively were on all the pills that the VA will give you
Mhm.
and trying to sort out their issues. And it did a couple of things. It turned them into zombies, into unrecognizable shells of who these people were to me. And some of them were mentors of mine, very impactful people. And they also would still try to kill themselves. So I knew for myself that going to the VA to get a plethora of pills was not the answer, right? That's just not, it's not a route I wanted to go down. Plus, I'm terrible with remembering to take any medication. So it's great that I'm never on medication because I got like a vitamin D pill that I'm supposed to take every day and I don't. Like I just forget to take it. And it's the smallest, tiniest, easiest pill to swallow. It's just, I just am not wired to just have to take something to survive. And I knew that wasn't going to work for me. So when I was in the sod farms, I came across the Sean Ryan show. And I take so much inspiration from him, but he talked about his trip to Mexico to do ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT. And a couple of weeks after he gets back from that trip, he sits down and his wife interviews him on his own show about that experience. And he started talking about all these things. And it wasn't him talking about these things, it was her talking about her observations of who he was before and after the experience and all of the things that had changed. And I was like, maybe I should pursue this. So I immediately got to work with the Google machine and started looking for veteran charities that would facilitate this for me because it's not a cheap trip. The trip I went on was like $7,500 a person.
Oh,
And,
wow.
I mean, I'm not rolling in cash like that. So I quickly got discouraged because everyone that I would want to apply to or that I would find largely only caters to special operations forces,
Interesting.
not conventional guys. And it's through no fault of their own. It's just the development of 20 years of global war on terror and Hollywood latching on to the Green Berets, the Delta Force guys, the Navy SEALs, all those people who it's Hollywoodized. Of course, it spins off 1,000,001 charities that then form these functions for psychedelic retreats. But luckily enough, there's one out there that does cater to conventional forces called the Heroic Hearts Project. And they picked me up and they sent me to Tarapoto, Peru in July of 2023. And it changed my entire life. It was so profound, in fact, that I look back at pictures from just over a year ago. I just did it this morning. I was looking for a photo and I found the Tarapoto pictures. I don't recognize the person in those photos at all. I know that it's me, a version of me,
Mhm.
but that person is largely just doesn't exist anymore. He's completely gone. Everything about him is gone, from his weight to his internal monologue to his thoughts and desires, his wants. Everything is completely different. And yeah, it was just so profound. It just changed everything for me.
So what did it look like when you went to a retreat a place that does them? Because I've
Yeah.
looked into it a little bit. So I know there's like retreat, like all-inclusive places that you could do it.
Yeah. So what did it look like? So I get picked up probably sometime, I'd say March, April timeframe. I start doing the intake with Royal Cards. They do like an intake interview. Then they tell you, do you want to go to Mexico or Peru? And I like to go to exotic places. Mexico's cool, but let's go to Peru. I've never been there. And then I want to say either 4 or 6 weeks before you start pre-integration training. And that's where it really got interesting because all of this, keep in mind my mindset at the time, all of this was largely like hippy dippy woo woo bullshit, right? Like, particularly for somebody who comes from the upbringing and then the lived experience I have, we are not interested in any of this stuff. And so I made a promise to myself when they picked me up and before I actually left to go to Peru that I would participate in everything and I would keep an open mind. And I think those are the two most important promises I could have ever made to myself. So the integration looked like weekly group coaching and one-on-one coaching with a psychedelic integration coach. And I didn't have the best coach, but I got a ton out of the group. And you start really you would start every session off with a 5 minute breathing exercise. And this is where I was introduced to breath work and kind of the power of breath work. And then we would talk about things like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, grounding, abundance mindsets, gratitude. We would talk about setting intentions and what you hope to get out of this experience and the difference between intentions and expectations. And so that went on for 4 or 6 weeks. And then the day comes and it's okay. Well, here's your ticket. Go to Orlando, get on an airplane. You'll fly to Lima, Peru, land in Lima, have a little bit of a layover, get on another airplane and go to the smallest airport in the world in Tarapoto. And then you spend that day and half of the next day at a really nice hotel that they facilitated to put up. It was called the Greenhouse Tarapoto. Jorge was amazing. It's a family owned hotel. He treats you like your family. It was great.
Mm.
And then they come and pick you up and they take you up to the high jungle in the Amazon rainforest. And you kind of wind through the mountains or whatever, and you get to this parking lot, and then there's a bridge. And they didn't say anything, but some of the members of the cohort, there was 12 of us, we're crossing this bridge. We're not going to come back the same people. And you don't really know that. And I've got a video somewhere of us all walking across the bridge. I'd say it's probably close to 100 feet long, like, over this river winding down the mountains. And then you're in this retreat space, and it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Everything's solar powered. They do have water. They have chefs on staff to cook very clean, great meals, and the real work begins. You get an introduction to the lay of the land, and you meet the facilitators and the owner, Vlad, who's an amazing human being. And you do your first flower bath, which is to cleanse the evil spirits and move the dark energy away. And then you'll do some, over the next day or so, you'll do some ayahuasca talk and learn how to handle these ceremonies. And then 4th of July, it's ceremony one. You eat lunch, you shut it down. 7 o'clock is the first ceremony that night. And that's when my life changed.
Mm. How long was the trip then for?
A whole week. Yeah. So the 2nd through the 7th, I was gone from the 1st to the 9th, I think, something like that. So you're like at the retreat for 5 days, day of travel on either side, whatever. Got to explore Tarapoto afterwards. But I will leave the details of what taking the medicine actually does for you and all of that. That's largely personal, and I'm still trying to unpack a lot of that stuff. But what I will say is, what did I get out of it? A lot of things. I learned that magic is real. I learned that God is real, or the universe, as I like to refer to it, and that everything's connected. I also learned how to love and respect myself. I learned that I was capable of so much more than anybody ever gave me credit for in my entire life. And I learned that it's okay to live life by my own standards.
Mm.
I don't have to fit anybody's mold of what they think that I should be, period, whatsoever. And that's really weird for me because I used to pride myself in walking around arrogantly thinking, I don't give a fuck what people think of me. I really did. I actually did care. And the difference now is I genuinely don't care. I do not care what you think of me because I know exactly who I am and what I'm doing.
I love that. I love that you were able to figure that out. This topic has been coming up a lot in my most recent episodes of our societal expectations, norms, what's expected, what's not expected. And it is really hard to change that in our minds of, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. I personally I've been very open about this on my podcast, but I struggled with infertility. And as a woman, you're supposed to be a mom in this society. And that's been a topic that's come up a lot too, is like, that does not define a woman, is having children. And so I think it's just so hard to break those societal norms that we've been conditioned to think for our entire lives and beyond that.
Yeah, I learned so many other things too, not to get like out there or conspiratorial, but big food and big pharma are largely responsible for keeping all of the things that I learned on this experience a secret. Attitude, abundance, yoga, breath work, grounding, all of those things are free and they all make an immediate difference in your life if you start practicing. And I know this because I've given these tools to other veterans who are transitioning. And in about 15 minutes, something as simple as walking into the other room and telling your wife you're grateful for her will absolutely change your mindset.
Yeah.
100,000%. And I have the text messages saying that they were both crying after I gave them the assignment, and that I don't think we've ever been closer since I did that.
Mm.
to prove that this shit works. And that's a lot of what the retreat's not really about taking the medicine. It's a large part of it. I would be lying if I said that it wasn't, but you're actually there to learn all of these things that have been kept secret from us, like the fact that we have more unprecedented access to food than any other time in human history.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. We things like ice water is actually not good for you. When in human history did we have access to ice water, to drink ice water?
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
I do love my ice cold water though, but I get what you're saying.
Since my experience, the only time I drink ice water is if we're out at a restaurant because that's how it comes. But it's
Yeah.
these little things like being addicted to things other than the traditional substances, drug and alcohol, marijuana,
Mhm.
all that stuff. I was addicted to sugar.
Yeah. I think
Sugar.
probably most Americans are.
Well, and I didn't realize like how bad it is for you. Learning that alcohol is actually probably one of the worst things we can ingest. It's straight poison. It is so damaging to all of the systems of our body. Learning
And yet
things,
it's legal and it's such also a societal norm. That's what we do when we go to people's houses, when we socialize. Like it's, yeah, that's super interesting to me too.
yeah, learning things like you can have a healthy relationship with another psychedelic like cannabis, and it doesn't have to consume you. It can actually build you. And it's not a secret. I love cannabis. I'm an avid user of cannabis and probably will be for the rest. That's another reason I don't fly anymore because FAA frowns upon that.
Yeah.
But it's the difference between setting the intention and having an expectation. So whereas before my trip, I would get high to escape. Now I get high to work on myself, to
Mm.
explore parts of myself that I may not be able to reach without some kind of help. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm not saying that it's a blanket for everything, that I can handle everything on my own. In fact, last week I just made a post on LinkedIn. I'm reaching out to the network that I've built. I've hit a wall with some things in my life that I need help dealing with, and I was looking for a counselor. But before that trip, I would have never asked for help. I would have thought that was, as a man, particularly as a man in our society,
Yeah.
that is the absolute biggest show of weakness that you can get. And I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. In fact, I think personally, it's the strongest thing you can do as a human being is to be vulnerable, admit that you don't have all the answers, and go ask somebody for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think men nowadays are just now finally starting to tap into being emotional, feeling emotional, and that I'm glad that's starting to change in society. I think it has a long ways to go still, but yeah, we definitely need to nurture our men in their emotions because you guys have been taught to suppress them for generations.
Yeah. Yeah. And the problem with that is we all think, and I'm just as guilty of this still to this day, I will compartmentalize things that I either don't want to deal with or that I think I have a handle on. But the sad truth is you can only do that for so long before Pandora's box opens, and it'll open at the most inconvenient time, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can say all day long, I've got this figured out. I even had, when I was getting out of the army, the VA therapist that does some of your ratings. He said, "Oh, you have an incredible ability to compartmentalize things and it doesn't affect you." That's bullshit. It affects everybody. You just reach a limit and you don't know where that limit's going to be. And so the other thing I'll say is it's important to be emotional. I used to pride myself on being a tough guy who never cries, but the reality of the situation is bottling all that shit up is actually more detrimental to you than the
Mhm.
appearance of someone seeing you crying. We release emotions for a reason. Crying, yelling, screaming, laughing. These are all what I learned to be called purges through the ayahuasca. You're purging negative energy out of your body when you're doing this. And I don't mean that in like a metaphysical sense. I really mean like when I was doing the ayahuasca, I could see dark energy being purged out of other human beings in the space that I was in. And that's the big takeaway, if you want to look at it from ayahuasca, is everything in life is about balance between light and dark. And there's really good examples on the screen here I can show you. if you look at your wall with the moon on the wall, the
Mhm.
darker gray with the lighter moon, the ceiling is white against it's everywhere. The dichotomy's on your microphone with the white border and the black. It's just your hair and your sweater, right? Like your eyes and your face. It's literally everywhere. It's all balance. And by purging, when you don't purge, when you don't cry, when you don't laugh, when you're angry all the time, all you're doing is letting the darkness consume you. And you're
Mhm.
becoming out of balance. And
Mhm.
I believe we're creatures of light, particularly because I know that there is something much, much larger out there now, and we're created in that image, and that image is as bright as it can possibly be. So, the balance between light and dark is what it's all about. And so now my whole life is about maintaining that balance, whether that means I need to cry today, I need to yell tomorrow, I'm going to laugh all night tonight, I need to share in some kind of hard thing that you're going through and be an ear for you, whatever that looks like. It's all about maintaining balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I recently had a conversation with somebody about how, as human beings, we seem programmed to focus more on the negative in life. And I'm guilty of it too. From time to time, I have an amazing clientele of clients, and I will have one negative experience with somebody, and it is so hard for me to pull myself out of that. And it's so easy to just be angry and focus on that. And then my husband will say to me, but you have so many amazing clients. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But why do you think, as we're talking about this light and dark, why do you think as humans we're naturally drawn to the negative in a lot of cases?
It's our ego.
Yeah.
It's really that, and I think genetically we're just hardwired to do that. All of human history has been one big adversity challenge, like from crawling out of the primordial soup, if you believe in evolution, to Adam and Eve in the garden. It's always been a struggle. It's always been that maintaining balance. We're just programmed to see, because negative hurts. It always hurts. It
Mhm.
always sucks. And it's why you hear people say, celebrate the wins. Why aren't you celebrating? We don't do that enough,
No, we
ever.
don't. Hmm.
Don't do that enough. And I just bring it all back to its abundance mindset. If you can get out of a fixed mindset, switch to a growth/abundance mindset, you'll quickly see, I'm looking around this desk with all this podcast equipment and the computers. I have more than most people in the world have on my desk right here, and it's in a
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
which contains more stuff that most people in the world don't have. I think that's another big driver is, particularly in the United States, we're trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Mm.
We always want more. We always want more. I'm just as guilty. I'm not sitting
Yep.
here preaching to anybody. However, I just took action to do something to mitigate that, to be disciplined in not wanting more. I want more all the time. My big thing is right now, we own one car. My wife
Hmm.
and I share a car. She works outside of the home. I work from home. And I want another car because I'm tired of having to move my gym schedule around, or having to go to Orlando for a VA appointment and having to move things around to get the car, or whatever that looks like. But I also want to keep doing what I'm doing with an infinite runway. And
Hmm.
in order to do that, I had to sacrifice some things.
Yeah.
Need those things. What do we need two vehicles for? What do I need another $450 a month payment on top of whatever insurance is going to cost, on
Yep.
top of maintenance and gas? I don't need that.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to have that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, it's
know?
really interesting with all the traveling that I've done. When I'm out of the country and I'm seeing the more developing countries and the poorer countries, I change my mindset. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so lucky to have what we have in America, the life I'm living. I'm able to travel to these places. And then it's so easy to come back and get caught up in the whole cycle of keeping up with the Joneses again. And I have to check myself very regularly. We had a mountain guide in Malawi, Africa. We did a hike, and he's amazing. We still keep in touch with him via WhatsApp. And he had like holes in his t-shirt. And my husband, at one point, we were spending 5 days, 24/7 walking together. And my husband said to him, Robert, you need a new t-shirt. You have holes in your shirt. And we knew that at the market, you can get a t-shirt for 50 cents. And he was like, I can't afford one. And that was like extremely eye-opening for me. I was like, oh, wow. And then later in the trip, we ended up having a conversation about cars. This is what made me think of this. And he's, how many cars do you have? Because he was telling us he wanted to be a minibus driver, that he didn't want to be a mountain guide anymore. He wanted to be a minibus driver, but he had to pay for the schooling and he had to buy his own minivan or minibus and whatever. And he's, how many cars do you guys have? And I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to tell you. I can't. We are not excessive human beings. My husband is very much a minimalist. And so we find a healthy balance. But at the time, we each had a car, and that was way more than he has ever had. And so I don't know. It's one of my favorite stories to tell because it was just really eye-opening for me to come home and be like, okay, I have a lot more than a lot of people out there, and I should be more grateful for it.
There's another lesson in there too. I don't know how your travels have been, but when I went to Peru, they're very much a third world country developing. They don't have a lot of stuff, but what I noticed is everybody's happy. Everybody
Yeah.
is happy. Every night of the week, they're putting on their Sunday's best, walking the streets, loud music playing right outside of all the shops, as friendly as can be. And I'm a giant. I'm 6'3".
You stand
When I
out.
yeah, and particularly you mentioned it at the beginning of the show. I lost 100 pounds after the ayahuasca experience. So I went to Peru, 311 pounds. So imagine a 6'3", 311 pound walking around a bunch of Peruvians who are largely no taller than 5'5", I would
Yeah.
say. But they're all happy. They're all very friendly. Nobody tried to take advantage of me because I didn't speak a lick of Spanish. And I really like to do shit, go off by myself and explore.
Yeah.
And they had big issues because our money and Peruvian, it's 8-1 for
Yeah.
Peruvian money. When I would get in the rickshaw and they'd take me across town, I would try to just give them the whole bill because I didn't want to deal with coins. And they wouldn't take it. They would not take extra money.
No.
And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So much so that when I came back, I had to connect in Miami to get back to Orlando. As soon as I landed in Miami and was standing in the customs line, I was like, I want to go back to Peru. The energy here sucks.
Yeah.
I can't. And I think if we can change our own mindsets to understand that I would say the vast majority of the world's population lives with less than we do here.
Mhm. Yeah.
State. And I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of it to this day. There's plenty of things that I want. I want a damn Ram TRX really bad. Do I need it? No. Am I going to ever spend $100,000 on it? No, I'm not. But it just goes to show you I want a lot of things too, but I'm willing to sacrifice to get to where I'm going first and understand that what I do have is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to definitely change that mindset because then we're also building a society on debt too, which is not good.
Just look around. Look
Mhm.
around. Look at credit card statistics
Yeah.
right now. It's
Yeah.
there's $3 trillion in credit card debt. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Why do we have that?
Yeah.
Stop. You
Yeah.
don't need those things.
No, so true. I just went to Pakistan in September, and when I tell people that they are some of the nicest, kindest people I have ever met in the entire world, and I've been to over almost 50 countries, people are like, really? Because of they're a Middle Eastern country, they're a Muslim country, whatever. But I will tell you, poor country as well. And some of the kindest, nicest people I've ever met in my life. And they're happy too. Happy.
Best food you've ever eaten.
Oh, yeah. Did you go to Pakistan?
I spent a bunch of
I knew you were in Afghanistan, you said.
Afghanistan and Iraq, Jordan. There was a quick foray into Pakistan, but I wasn't supposed to be there, so we won't talk. We won't talk about that. But
You got
yeah,
it.
I haven't been to like a market or anything to visit Pakistan. We had a bad leader who led us the wrong direction. We crossed the border, may or
Oh,
may not
man.
be fighter jets that were involved, kind of scary, minefields. Uh,
Mm,
but no, the best rotisserie chicken I've ever had in my life came from Iraq.
Peru. From where?
No, Iraq.
Iraq. Oh, I thought you were going to tell you Peru. They love their rotisserie chickens there too.
No, Peru was an awesome experience. After the retreat, we got to spend an entire day in Tarapoto before we flew out and just going to the market. And they still do things the old school way, slabs of meat hanging on the hooks, ready to sell you right there. They just killed it this morning.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But some of the best food I've ever had have come from third world countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think my least favorite food of all my traveling was the Philippines.
No.
Philippines, and I suppose when you're talking about like third world country, Africa, I went to Ethiopia. They had fantastic food, but like I went to Uganda, Tanzania, and Malawi. And I guess as far as like local food goes, it's because they're all so poor. It's whatever nutrients they can get that's cheap and filling. And so there wasn't a lot of flavor there because spices are expensive, right? So maybe those are the two places. But I was surprised by the Philippines because usually Asia has really good food. But yeah, it's a huge part of traveling. So now you are working with veterans who are transitioning out of the military and into life.
Yeah. Any veteran, really. Any veteran transitioning or transitioning, the long-term goal for the strategic veteran, which is a podcast, it's really a whole ecosystem, but the long-term vision is to reverse engineer the current transition program that they have and make this a better version of that's mandatory for them to go into. I have lofty goals of really trying to turn this into an entrepreneurship pathway that if they can get into it for 6 months before they get out, they can at least have a solid foundation, learn about things like email lists, the things that drive a business forward that can make you honestly more money than you're ever going to make in corporate America. I really believe that. And I really believe you can do that by discovering who you are as a person, your core values, beliefs, and passions. And then you can build an entire empire around your passions, beliefs, and values. And I want to turn that into a transition program to help at least get them started so they have a clear path when they get out. But I just really just give all of the knowledge I have away to every single veteran who reaches out to me, like whether they're struggling, whether they just have a quick question, whatever it looks like. I just want to be the guy that I didn't have. And I think it's so important because they can avoid a lot of the mistakes and the pitfalls and the dark days. And I wasted 8.5 years of my life, 8.5 years. And if you really think about that, I'll be 40 in May. So I wasted my entire 30s trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't want that for anybody else. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that you're helping people. Do you think we're told all the time? I don't know if I can ask this question without going into politics, but we're told all the time that veterans do not get the assistance that they need through the government, through the VA, whatever. Is that true?
I think to a degree that is true, yes. You have to think of the VA, the military, all of it, such a large machine and it takes a
Sure.
lot to make it run. So my experience is going to be different from somebody who was in the Air Force and got out in Colorado versus. So I do think that there's some truth to that. Having used 3 different VA hospitals since I've been out, from American Lake in Lakewood, Washington, to Columbia, South Carolina, Dorn VA, to the Orlando VA, there's a huge difference. For example, in Washington, I have sleep apnea and it's not weight induced, which is good to know. Unfortunately, I'll never come off the machine, but whatever. I've been out 9 years and I'm still waiting for an initial appointment to get supplies at the American Lake VA.
Oh, wow.
Versus like here in Orlando, they're really quick. The longest appointment I've had to wait for anything routine is 2 weeks. For anything, I think the overall longest one is like 8 months for a dental appointment, but they're just so overloaded. That's understandable.
Yeah.
So there are discrepancies there. I do think that the VA rating system to get VA compensation or disability, however you want to refer to it. I don't like disability. I think that's a bullshit term just because it insinuates that you're not able to work, and most of us are. I think we should just call it VA compensation. But people and their ratings, that's another. I got fortunate. I had a really good VA rep who went through my medical record, who had a list a mile long of things that I should be claiming because he knew his job and he really cared and wanted to do his job. But somebody in the med board process that I was going through with got less than because he didn't have those reps. So I think there's lots of problems there, and that's perpetuating this picture that we don't have all these resources or we're not taken care of. It's because lazy people don't give a shit and they don't want to do their job. And I don't think there's an excuse for that, but I can't prove it either. So we don't talk about that. I do think there's a lot of problems. I think that the entire transition program could be better. I
Yeah.
think that we could do more to explore alternate, stop throwing fucking pills at us. Actually, let's come together as a nation and let's put the squash on big pharma and them scheduling psychedelic medicines like MDMA, who in the recent months have been proven to cure PTSD in veterans at a rate of 78%.
Yeah.
Why are we not making this available for veteran studies at a minimum?
Yeah.
Versus maybe, I don't know, let's look at psilocybin and all of the work that it's been doing for mental health, the mental health crises that face our population here, and the stories of children who have ADD or whatever so bad that they cannot go to school and they microdose for 3 days and they're like, Mom, I want to go to school. or those people who manage, I microdose from time to time mushrooms, and my creativity skyrockets and my ability to learn new things faster skyrockets. And why are we actively blocking this shit? I don't understand it. I do understand it. It's because money. You can't make money on psychedelics. That's why.
And that's what, and they're temporary, right? They're not like antidepressants are basically permanent. They don't advertise them that way, but they're permanent. So, but these are like, they actually change the neural pathways in your brain and stuff like that to where you can actually make changes in your life. What was that? What's that show on Netflix? Is it How Do You Change Your Mind? Have you watched that?
Yes.
Yeah. Was that the one? I think that was the one that had the guy in it that had really bad OCD. And he did that big mushroom trip and completely cured. Completely cured.
Yep.
Crazy. Why are we, I agree with you. Why are we not doing more with these drugs? And I think especially if they would help veterans, why not?
It's not if, it's 100% proof. From ayahuasca, there was 12 of us on my cohort. I'd say 85% of us are in way better places. I know a couple of them went and did another ceremony a couple weeks ago because just the benefits are so great. And you multiply that times, I don't know how many courses just Heroic Hearts has run. You've got the one that I talked about with Sean Ryan, that's largely all of the special operations community's been through. And these dudes they're healing, they're getting better, they're changing their lives.
Amazing.
And we've got all of these active freaking case studies, yet the thing that bothers me the most is we had to go out of the country to do this. The country we fought for, gave up our lives for, and wrote a blank check to. They don't, and I think that's what everybody means by they don't want to take care of us. It's a fight to get the money that you're owed for the injuries that you sustained. It's a fight to get decent health care that is not just here's pills, take these pills, and then you end up on 10 different pills that, oh, by the way, cause all kinds of other side effects, because that's their whole plan, is to get you hooked for, like you said, for life, and cause other health problems that they then have to prescribe medicine for. It just doesn't make sense to me because we already paid for it. The taxpayers now pay.
Yeah.
Like my medicine's free from the VA, so I could go get as much as I want. You know what I mean? If that's the route that I wanted to go, but I don't want to do that to you, and I damn sure don't want to do it to myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. How can, oh, go ahead.
Answered your question. I know it's such a broad question to try to answer because I think it's so experiential based, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you, just look at the over 40 veterans a day are killing themselves. It's not 22, it's double that, because they're not including accidental overdoses in that. So obviously there's definitely some things that could be better, and particularly in the mental health care, realm. I think that the transition and that's my mission in life, is to tackle the transition problem. So yeah, I think yes and no. Yes, there's plenty of resources out there. Yes, you do have to go hunt for a lot of them. And yes, you do have to do a lot of legwork to figure out how to get what you're entitled, but it's also worth it. And if you're not lazy, you can figure it out.
Yeah. It's good to know, because for those of us who are not in the system or don't know the system very much, and we just hear whatever from the outside, it's good to know that some of it is working and some of it is not. Oh man. So we have been about an hour. So what final parting words do you have for my listeners?
I just want to tell everybody to get out of your own way. And if you've got this gut feeling like what you're doing isn't aligned with who you are as a person, know that it's okay to quit that thing and pursue the thing that does fulfill you. We're put here for a very specific reason, whatever that may be. And I don't have the answer to that, but it's not to live your life the way somebody else dictates. It's to live your life the way that resonates with you. And I think that becomes way more clear when you do get out of your own way and you start living your life for yourself. It really becomes clear why you're here, what your purpose is. I always said when I was getting out that I wanted to find a way to lead soldiers again. And here I am leading all walks of military life. And so it comes full circle. I just had to get out of my way, and you trust my gut. And I think that's my message is, your gut is usually never wrong. If you've got a disgusting feeling in your stomach because you're going to that corporate job every day, It's there to tell you something. It's warning you against what you're doing, and that's not the path for you. And I think you should trust that. And beyond that, if you need help with this, veteran or not, reach out to me. I genuinely just want to make a difference in your life, whether that's an hour-long conversation with me, or we work together and some coaching or some consulting, or just be your friend. I don't care. I just want to help people.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we'll link all the ways to get a hold of you in the show notes as well. I see you have a website and LinkedIn and stuff like that. Are you on Instagram and Facebook and all the things?
I'm on all the things. Do I do a lot on all the things? LinkedIn and the website are the best ways. LinkedIn is by far my largest platform. However, 2025 and how business works, it's switching to Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that stupid shit.
I know. That's funny. I'm like an Instagram snob. I'm not really on Facebook as much and stuff. I'm not even on, I have a LinkedIn profile, but I do not do much with it. And then your podcast is called The Strategic Veteran.
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody go listen.
Every Wednesday.
Okay. Every Wednesday, everybody go listen to the podcast. And then if somebody's listening who maybe wants to help veterans or contribute to anything like that, do you have any suggestions on best ways to do that?
Yeah, just get started. Honestly, reach out to me. I can find something to point you in the right direction. Reach out to any veteran creator that you see on LinkedIn. I say LinkedIn just because I think you're going to have better response rates on LinkedIn. I'm sure you could reach out on TikTok and Instagram. However, you're talking about like a large following on LinkedIn is between 5 and 15,000 versus a large following on Instagram is like 500,000.
Yeah.
There's a big discrepancy there. But honestly, just if you've got an idea, particularly if you're a veteran who's struggling, like you are going through it, you are living the problem, you know how to solve it, take action on that and be loud about it. And don't be afraid to exist everywhere, because I promise you, it's not as bad as you think it is when you put yourself out there. In fact, it's probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, being able to get a website form submission about a veteran who's going through some shit and he doesn't know what to say to me. He's at the end of his rope, and I can send him my phone number and have a 20-minute conversation with him, and he no longer wants to kill himself.
Yeah.
I, by and large, have no clue what I'm doing. I just know that I have walked a mile in the shoes that they're in, and I know that I have some valuable information if they're willing to talk to me and listen and ask the right questions.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you're taking your experience and helping people. And I think there's something so powerful about being open and honest about your journey and your story. And I know for myself, it's been inspiring to see how many people I've helped or people that have reached out that are going through the same thing. So as scary as it might be to put it out there and open it up, I think most people I've talked to have said that was the best thing they could have ever done, is be open about it.
The only way out is through.
Yeah. So true. Thank you so much, Adam, for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing your personal struggles, your journey, everything. I don't take that lightly because I know that's not an easy thing to do. So thank you very much for being my first man on the podcast. I think it went great.
So much for having me. I really care about the work that I do, and I really just want everybody to see that they can live a life that they've always dreamed of. It's really not hard. Just get out of your own way.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. All right, my dear. Thank you so much for being on here. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Sure, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the stories shared, please consider following us on your preferred podcast platform. Your ratings and reviews make a huge difference. They help us reach more listeners and continue bringing you engaging, insightful content. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Until next time, keep listening, growing, and sharing.